Welcome back to this class. Welcome, students. We were talking about thought and speech in international business communication, and so we will continue with the same thing today as well. We'll first revise what we did last time. Okay, so we talked about uh, cognitive styles, and we specifically talked about the field dependent and field independent cognitive styles. We talked about reflectivity and impulsivity. We talked about tolerance of ambiguity. Then we talked about the relationship of these cognitive styles to intercultural environment. We also discussed, means I wanted you to think about the cultural differences in problem solving. How is your problem solving, or how is the manner in which we solve problems different from the manner in which your classmates from other cultural backgrounds solve problems. So what are the differences in the manner in which you think about problems and as opposed to the manner in which other people think about problems? Rural urban differences, the differences across different states within India. So all those things influence what you think about, what you say, and ultimately how whatever you say gets interpreted is also influenced by the manner in which we think about things. So I also wanted you to think about the cultural and situational variants in the patterns of thought. Okay, so now moving on it, let us talk a little bit about the cultural differences in problem solving. And uh, as Kaplan has discussed this in a seminal paper, and he talked about the different ways in which people from different cultures solve problems. The English, for example, solve problems in a very straightforward and direct manner. Okay, so they will just see here English solve problems in direct manner. So they will just go from point A to point B, point A to point B, and that is how they solve their problems. And the Semitic, on the other hand, solve their problems in a tangential and semi-direct manner, which means they will go from point A to point B, then they will come back to revise point A and go to B plus 1, and then they will come back, revise A to B plus 1 and go to B plus 2, and that's how they solve their problems or think about their problems. So the Oriental cultures, on the other hand, like to go about the problems in a circular manner. So see, this is the Oriental pattern of problem solving method. So they will start from a general area and then slowly build a case and then come to the point. So in a spiral fashion, where they slowly zeroing on the point, covering all ground around the problem and then reach to the crux of the problem, and this is the circular manner. Okay, the circuitous manner is followed by the Romance culture. And what they do is they sort of they will cover some ground on one side and some ground on the other side, and instead of going directly to the problem, they will try and build a broader base for approaching the same problem. And so they will build this broad base for approaching the problem, and they will reach to the problem. The Russian culture, the Russian cultures, on the other hand, may cover some grounds, some broad base, and also at times may just approach the time directly. So different people, different cultures have developed different styles of solving their problems and thinking about these problems and speaking about how they solve their problems and speaking about how they do different things. Okay, so some cultural and situational variations in the patterns of thought. We have the universalistic style of thought, which means some cultures believe that concepts are universally applied. So for example, what is fair in one situation will also be fair in another situation, or say When we are talking about management, the output of any activity should be measured in terms of what one has been able to achieve and tally it with the number of man hours spent on the job and see that is how efficiency is calculated. And it's not the quality of time, it is more about the quantity of time, and that quantity remains the same whether it is a man or a woman or people of different ages, or so that same kind of efficiency is expected from different people, and that is the universalistic pattern of thought. Again, another pattern is that the nominalistic pattern of thought. On the other hand, nominalistic pattern of thought believes that abstract terms exist, but abstract objects do not exist, which means that hardware, for example, is an abstract object. Everybody cannot be expected to be working hard. This is something that is specific to some people. Then morality, politeness and all are concepts that cannot be applied to everybody. Some people are moral, some people are not. Some people are polite, some people are not. So we go on a case by case basis. The next pattern is that next cultural situation variations in pattern of thought is that hypothetical pattern. So hypothetical pattern of thought, here this one, hypothetical pattern of thought would be assuming that everybody is hardworking. We expect this much of work, or assuming that people are not going to be able to put in more than 80% of their actual capacity. We'll decide on things in a certain manner. So we have these assumptions, and then we prove or disprove these assumptions by way of or by talking to people or by experiencing different things. The intuitional pattern of thought. Next is that intuitional pattern, which includes gut feeling. The intuitional pattern of thought is where we go by our gut feeling. We feel. It is not fact based, it is not indicative of anything that has happened in the past. It is a gut feeling. It is an intuition that if you motivate people enough, they may even work up to 110% of their perceived capacity. So it is gut feeling. It may be proven wrong, but it has been seen generally. That is what people would say. My gut says that if I treat my subordinate right, they will work better than the best of their ability, and they will also be loyal to the organization. So that is an intuitional style of thinking. So if I am in a problem where people are not working up to their full capacity, I do not give them numbers, I just motivate them. That is the intuitional pattern of thinking. Next is that organismic, okay, organistic thought of pattern. So organismic, on the other hand, is where we feel that every concept is related to the other concept, and it is a constituent part of the whole. I will repeat here. Organistic organistic thought of pattern or pattern of thought uh, is where we feel that every concept is related to the other concept, and it is a constituent part of the whole. So when we are talking about an organization where people are not motivated, or where people are not able to work to their full capacity, we say it does not matter if everybody is not putting in their 100%. If one person is taking on the burden of another, it's all right. We are all constituent parts of the whole, and we may or may not be able to give it 100% at all times. So as long as somebody else who we are working with is able to compensate for our loss of work, it is fine. We are all parts of a whole. We have to function well as a whole, not as individual constitutions. We are one organism, and these are all different parts of the same organism. Okay, so the next third of pattern is that pattern of thought is that dialectical method. Okay, so the dialectical method of thinking is where we say that if we have a problem, we need to find a cause and effect relationship. There has to be some logic, and this is very different from the intuitional pattern of thinking, where we say that I believe, I feel that this is going to be so. And dialectical is where we say that everything has to have a logical reason. There has to be a logical backing for everything that we see in this problem. Hmm? There has to be a logical backing for every solution we propose to this problem. Okay. Next is that temporal. Temporal is where we reason using time as the basis. We let time heal. We let time take its own course, and we let the emphasis on time, or we say that if we leave something long enough, it will take care of itself. So, there may or may not be a logical backing to support the solving of problems. Sometimes time just tempers people's emotions, time just helps reprioritize things, and it just helps heal all. Okay, so that is what people think. Some people think. We also have the axiomatic pattern of thinking. Okay, where we start with definitions, postulates, and common notions, and establish the truth according to those. So we say that assume this is how we define x, y, and z or z. This is how we define an organization. This is how we define a perfect employee. This is how we define optimal output, and we measure everything against these axioms or commonly held beliefs or the definitions that we have arrived at by some method of standardization or benchmarking. Then we have effective thought, which means that one is true regardless of the evidence I'm putting in my work. I know I'm true at heart. I know that I have been giving it 100%. I know my organization has been giving it 100%. So I know, I feel it is not gut. It is my belief that I have so much of emotion invested in it. I feel that this is what my role in the organization is like, and because I feel so strongly, I should be believed. Then we have the inductive, and we have these two things we have already discussed, axiomatic and affective. Then inductive and deductive style of reasoning or problem solving, and this is something that we have all talked about or discussed or learned. So general to specific and specific to general, and I will let you all figure out which is which. Okay, so you need to do some homework, and this is just common sense. So I will just let you to figure this out. We have the analytic. Okay, now we have the analytic where we have facts, and we leave room for interpretation. Hmm? I may interpret the same information in a different manner using a different kind of logic. Somebody else may interpret the same information in a completely different manner using completely different kind of logic. We have again, next is that we have global, which means universal, a large. It is an overarching the pattern of thought where it is more inclusive. Again, we have uh, sequential, which means more linear. We look for sequences. We look for one thing leading to another, and so on. Again, we have concrete sequential, which is reasoning based on reality and real tangible objects. If I can see it, it makes sense. Okay, if I can see it, it makes sense. If I cannot see it, then it doesn't make sense. That is concrete sequential, and these things have to be connected to each other. We also have abstract random. Okay, we also have abstract random, which is the exact opposite the concrete sequential, which is creative, and we reason by making connections that may not seem very evident between real objects. So that is abstract random style of thinking, and this list is by no means exhaustive. These are just few categories that researchers have okay, these are the few categories that researchers have over the years come up with to explain how different people think and solve problems and arrive at conclusions and interact with each other and understand the world around themselves. Okay, and when we are talking about international business communications, specifically intercultural communication and thought and speech within intercultural communication, we must understand and accept and celebrate these differences between people. Okay, so and if we are sensitive to these different patterns of thought, we cannot expect anyone to think like us. Okay, every person is different than other, so we think differently, other person will think differently. So I am teaching you this course. I hope that you will become sensitive. I hope that you will understand what I am saying. I hope that you will agree at some point with whatever I am saying. But I can only hope. I cannot just force it down anyone's throat. I cannot force you to believe what I believe. I understand that there will be some of you who will not agree with what I am saying. There will be some of you who will not be convinced. I may not be able to convince some of you, no matter how hard I try, and that's okay, because we all think differently. There could be some people amongst you who are not sequential thinkers. There could be some people amongst you who think only in terms of images. There could be some people among you who think only in formulae and patterns. There could be some people among you who think in terms of real life situations, applications to real life situations. So you could be saying, whatever she is saying sounds very fancy, but unless she is able to give me a real situation that I have experienced or seen, I am not able to understand anything. So there could be some people who might be able to relate to whatever I am saying in an even more abstract manner than what I am using. So we are all different, and that is fine. That is absolutely fine, as long as we understand that people who are interacting with could be thinking differently than us, could be solving problems differently than us, could be saying things differently than we do, could be saying the same things differently than we do. Half of our job is done. So management is all about communicating your expectations to the people who can fulfill them, and getting these people to do the things that you want them to do. That is what management is. That is what we try and do. We are ultimately here to make money. When we manage something, especially in business, the ultimate goal is to make money by ethical means, by using benchmarks in the best manner possible, by the most optimal use of resources, and again by ethical use of resources. So people, we have to get things done by people, and in order to get things done, we have to appeal to their comfort zones, which is what I have been stressing on since the first lecture. And in order to do that, we have to understand where they are coming from, what they might be thinking, how they might be thinking about different things, and that is where all that I'm telling you now comes in. Okay, so let us move on to the next part of this lecture, which is ethnocognitism and hemisphericity. Okay, ethnocognitism and hemisphericity. Okay, again, two huge words that means something very very simple. Okay, so see here, ethnocognitism, ethnocognitivism means thought patterns dominant within a culture. Ethnocognitivism means thought patterns dominant within a culture. So our culture does this in this manner. So this is how we solve problems. We solve problems in this way, in ethnocognitivism manner. Okay, if somebody falls sick, we start with some remedies. May not make sense to everyone. You have a stomach ache, you go and have lots of plain water to start with. Some people believe that, and it works for them. If you have any infection, you have a mosquito bite, you rub iron, something made of iron over it. There may not be any medical reason to support this theory, but some people have faith in these things and it works for them. You have a bee sting, you have a bee sting, you take the biggest piece of iron that you can find. It can be nail, not a rusted nail. It could be a key, and you just rub over it and it goes away. And that is what people say. I'm not propagating that, but all I'm trying to say is that some people feel that way. That is how things are done in their culture. You use home remedies before you go to a doctor. Fair enough. That is how our culture does this. When you are trying to build a house, you call everybody. You buy a piece of land before you even break ground. You have some sort of a prayer service, or you pour water in some corner of the land. That is how our culture does it. We will not sit and plant. We will not get a blueprint of the floor plan passed. So before we do certain things, and that is what, that is culturally dictated, or people talk about, that is vastu, and some people believe in it. It is cultural. So again, that is, we go by the thought patterns that are dominant in our cultures, and that influences how we think about things and what we say about them, coming from our own cultures. So this is what defines our context. Hmm? And ethnocognitivism just break it up. So the second thing that influences how we think about things and solve problems is hemisphericity. Okay, you must have heard about the different parts, the different hemispheres of your brain dominating different kinds of activities. So left brained and right brained people, left brained and right brained people, and we talk about the more analytical part being dominated by the left side of the brain. Okay, see here, the more analytical part being dominated by the left side of the brain. Okay, and the more creative part being dominated or being taken care of by the right side of the brain. Some objective type questions might be asked on this portion. Okay, so keep in mind, more analytical part is dominated by the left side of the brain, and more creative part being dominated or being taken care of by right side of the brain. So hemisphere dominance in the brain is very, it is specific to individuals. It is not culture based, and that combined with what our culture dictates, or what our culture trains us to do, will shape how we respond to situations. And both of these influence behaviors in different cultures, and the manner in which these behaviors are perceived and interpreted by other cultures. So it is ethnocognitivism and hemisphericity. Hmm? Nature nurture, nature nurture controversy. This is something that has been ongoing in the human sciences or social sciences also. Psychology, sociology, topology. We talk about the nature nurture controversy, which means what we are born with and what our environment trains us to do. That is nature nurture controversy theory. So and how we do things is shaped by both of these factors, and so that is what ethnocognitivism and hemisphericity is all about. what what my environment, what my culture trains me to do, how my culture trains me to solve problems, and how I inherently am inclined, genetically inclined to solve these problems. Okay, so there are some styles of learning and problem solving and their hemispheric preferences. So uh, some styles of learning and their problem solving and their hemispheric preferences. We have the imaginative style of learning, which is primarily right hemisphere, and people who have the style of learning visually perceive information concretely and process it reflectively, which means you see things, you take in things, you perceive it as concrete piece of information. But when it comes to processing this information, you process this information reflectively or creatively, or by using methods that may not seem, or by using connections, making connections that may not seem very obvious to a person who is very logical minded. It is not illogical, it is intuitive, it is reflective. There is some connection somewhere that you cannot put your finger on, but it works. So you think out of the box, you think creatively, you think in terms of abstract things, and you go from there, and that is how you solve problems. So that is primarily right hemisphere. It is called the imaginative style of learning. Then we have the analytical style of learning, which is we emphasize right and left hemisphere processing. So it is both. None of whatever I have told you happens in isolation. The problem solving styles that we talked about also happen in combination. The manner in which we learn also sometimes takes place in combinations. It is both sides of the brain are working. Sometimes one takes charge, sometimes the other takes over. Okay, so in the analytical style of learning, we perceive information abstractly and process it reflectively, which means that we take the information, we reflect on it, and we intuitively we respond to it. Okay, so next is just these things we discuss. Next is common sense. So common sense integrates theory and practice by perceiving information abstractly and immediately applying it to concrete situations. So that is common sense, which means we take the information and we take in concrete information and we make logical connections, then we connect it to the memory traces in our brains, and then we apply it to common sense situations. How would whatever I have thought about, or how would whatever I am dealing with apply to common sense or to day-to-day situations? For example, if you are sincere, that sincerity should be reflected in your day-to-day situation. Okay, so we take a situation that fits this problem best and say This is how I understand the situation. We take the concepts we have learned and apply them to real life situations. So next is that uh, dynamic, primarily right hemisphere. We perceive information concretely and apply it immediately to concrete situations. So we take the information and we immediately apply it to concrete situations. We get the information from concrete sources. It is something tangible, it is something we can see, we can believe, and we take this information and then we apply it to real situations. And these are the different styles of learning that people follow. And what are the implications of these styles of learning? What are the implications of these styles of learning? You must discuss this in your group, in your class. Okay, so the implications are that when we are training new people, if we know how they may be learning or how they may be processing the information we are giving them, it will become easier for us to appeal to their comfort zones. Okay, it appeals to their comfort zones. Okay, and that is the main application of whatever I am talking about to international business situation. People will come from different backgrounds. Okay, people will come from different backgrounds. They will come from with different inclinations. They will come with different ideas about situations, and we have to help them learn new things in your organization. And that is where the knowledge of different communication styles, different learning styles, different problem solving styles comes in. Okay, so next is that uh, Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. Okay, Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. What is this Sapir-Whorf hypothesis? We may discuss in next class. Okay, so let us stop here. We may discuss this theory in next class. Okay, then till then, thank you and have a nice day.